Welcome to episode 5 of SD's podcast where Connor and Dom talk about stuff.
Thanks for joining yet again.
All right, and so for today, what we have is talking about the warmer weather and what you can do as the seasons start to change. So right now, it is currently March 15th, and so we're still in the midst of winter. We still got some snow on the ground, but we want to try and think about what we're going to do to get active and stay active as the weather gets nicer. And so us living up in New England, there's a lot to do actually. We have beach, we have mountains, we have parks, and so today we're going to go over how to take what you've done in the gym and bring it outside. So kind of like a weights to world idea, all right? And then from there, we're going to talk about the different things that you can do outside and that you might already be doing or might not have explored yet. And then what to do on rainy days where you might be forced back inside, and then what we like to do as well.
Yeah, and to kind of even tie it all together, it's nice that the nicer weather's coming to encourage people to go outside more. Obviously, with living in New England, we're stuck in our houses probably 3 to 4 months during the winter time just because the cold, even when it doesn't snow, you just don't want to expose yourself to those types of elements. It can be a lot harder to breathe too when it's colder out just because the air is a lot thinner, so it can be a little bit more sharp in the lungs. So that might discourage people from going outside. And in addition to that too, along with the winter, seasonal depression can come along. There's a lot of factors that can play into not wanting to kind of capitalize on your fitness during the winter time. So now that we're approaching spring and the warmer weather, seasonal depression is slowly behind us, and it's just time for us to kind of start some new ideas to just continue building upon the goals that we had set for ourselves back at the beginning of the year.
That's right. So we're going to start with going from the gym to the outdoors. Now, if we think about what's going on outside or what we like to do in the spring or summer, a lot of it is pretty lower body dominant, like, hiking, walking, biking, things like that. We want to make sure that your cardio is up to par and your lower body strength is there too. So working on a treadmill, doing some incline work, things like that. If you're a hiker, incline work is going to be the best way to get your hip flexors and your calves ready for the season. And then lower body strength to make sure that, you can endure the biking, hiking, whatever it is that you're doing.
That's not to say, though, when you do outdoor activities, you still are using your upper body. The way that we kind of categorize it, in a sense, is that we try to focus on the primary movements, which your primers, like Connor said, are going to be legs, lower body, hips, and then the assistive muscles, which help to assist the primary ones, are going to be core, maybe some upper back strength if you're holding onto a backpack or a water jug or something like that, just so that way, again, you are using the upper body, but not to the same degree that you're going to be using the lower body to exert power, strength, and things like that.
The upper body is stabilizing more of like a static strength, whereas the lower body is a little bit more dynamic. But at the end of the day, it's always going to come back to what? The core. And so we want to make sure that the core is ingrained in our training day, night, and 365 days a year, because the core is everything. And if we kind of think of it this way, there's a rule that we find within corrective exercise, physical therapy, and functional training. Proximal stability equals distal mobility. So the stronger our core is, the more mobility we'll be able to gain moving outward from the chain of the body. So when we're working, let's keep using hiking as an example, whether you're hiking 4,000 footers or just your local trail. So you want to make sure your core is stable. When your core is stable, your hips are going to be able to move a little bit more freely and independently. We want everything in our body to move by itself, but to be able to work together. And so mobility is a combination of two things. Mobility is a combination of flexibility and strength. You need to have both to be able to move freely. For example, if you are lying down on the ground and you lift your leg up ahead of you with your knees straight, let's say you only get 45 degrees off the ground, okay? Perfectly, we'd love to see 90. Not everyone can get there. But when you're stretching, if you're holding a strap around your leg and you're holding that stretch, as soon as you let go of that strap, that leg's gonna drop. So that's only flexibility. You got up to 45 degrees. That's still pretty good. A lot of people have a hard time getting there, but Now we got to think about the strength for the opposing muscle group that is actually holding that stretch and working on strengthening that. And PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, has a few different forms that help facilitate that. So let's say, for example, you're holding your leg up and you're stretching your hamstring. Now what you want to do is, if you're using a strap, you want to let go of that strap, and you're going to hold your leg up in that exact position using the strength of your quad and your hip flexors, and try and do that for about 5 seconds and then relax. Repeatedly doing that throughout the body is going to help train your body to not only get into a new position, but hold it. And this is all to say, the stronger that your body is equally, the more mobile you'll become, and then that's going to help you when you're walking on rocky trails, on the beach, or anything where it requires for your body to move around very dynamically and inconsistently, which we find a lot in New England.
Yeah, and to kind of even go off of that, a lot of times with our lower body strength, yes, it is really good to focus on the primary muscles that you're working, but I would say more than anything, going back to working your flexibility and mobility, what's really going to come through is how strong are your joints? How strong are the muscles supporting and surrounding those specific joints? Specifically with the lower body, the big three that we tend to try to focus on is ankles, knees, and hips. Reason being, if you're trying to do something that is an uneven terrain or you're going up on an incline, your hips are going to be slightly tilted. Your ankles may have to adjust if there's rocks or things like that to make sure that they're not everting or inverting too much, making sure that your posture is going to stay nice and upright, and making sure that you're relying more on your quads as opposed to placing stress throughout the knees. So there's a lot of things that lower body dynamic movements do entail. So by trying to get a head start on all of these, it sounds very overwhelming, but like anything else, as long as you have a plan of action, it's definitely going to help to carry you, no pun intended, a long way. So a lot of things that you can kind of start with, even if you're not the biggest gym goer, start off just by stretching. It's something that is light intensity on your body, or can be light intensity depending on the severity of the stretch. It doesn't require any equipment. Granted, Connor said you could use a strap. You could also use a belt if you have a belt for your pants. You don't need, and honestly, sometimes you don't even need that. All you need is just your hands. So a lot of times there are things that you can work on that don't require much equipment that will still help to prepare you for being outdoors.
And then one way to kind of hit the legs, knees, and ankles in one functional exercise would be what I like to call the four-way lunge. So it starts with lunging forward, coming down through your hips, landing softly through the knee and with a flat foot, and then lunging out back to your neutral state. And then you're going to do a side lunge outward, and then you're going to do what's called or you're going to do the reverse lunge, where now your leg is going backwards. And then the last one would be what's called the curtsy lunge, where you're actually lunging with your leg going around the other stance leg. And so what that does is, by doing like 5 to 10 reps of that set on each leg, that's going to help work your knees, ankles, and hips in those 4 planes of motion: in front, beside, behind, and across. And by just doing that exercise a little bit every day on top of your stretching, your legs are going to be much, much, much more ready for dynamic environments than just doing barbell squats and Bulgarians. The idea is you want to keep things moving in different planes around the body, because even hiking is a very sagittal movement. You're moving like forward and very little backward. But if you're doing a little bit more trail work, or if you're trying to hike a mountain that's a bit rockier, you're going to have to get down on your hands sometimes. You're going to have to move your legs further apart. And you want to make sure that when you have to go do that movement, you're not going to pull something or sprain anything and get hurt. That's going to ruin the whole time for you. So focus now on keeping your mobility and your strength going in a very dynamic fashion.
So to even go off of that as well, so a lot of times, to even touch upon the core strength activity, everyone thinks that with your core, it is in the stomach. And as true as what that is, a lot of people don't actually know that your core really starts in your back and wraps around to the front. So a lot of times people will have the misconception of only wanting to work strictly the abdominal muscles, which
sit-ups, crunches.
which is great. However, if you're going to be doing motions that are going to continuously pull you forward, you have to make sure that you're doing something to balance that out so the muscles in your back are able to pull you all the way up into that extension, that you're able to find that balance in your hips.
So, sorry.
No, you're good. So a lot of times, yes, as great as it is to work the abdominal muscles, don't forget about the other pieces of the core as well, which is again going to entail your back, your erectors, your lumbars, and all of those smaller muscles of the lower back as well.
So ways to target that would be, let's take the hiking posture and the biking posture where your hips are hinged, you're leaning forward. It's very easy to go into a heavier anterior tilt, which is kind of what you're going to want. However, you have to, again, like Dom said, focus on keeping all aspects of the core balanced. So let's take that hiking posture. You're going up an incline, your knees are bent, your hips are flexed, and your lumbar is extended. And so the idea is, what we don't want is when your knee extends to cause your lumbar to follow that extension. Instead, we want that going into the glute. That's the glute's job, not the back's. What's happening above the pelvis is stable and static. What's happening below is dynamic and fluid. And so for your core, we're going to want to think about doing some exercises where you're bent over, okay? Where you're doing a bent over row or deadlifts, things like that, to help strengthen your hip flexors to do the dynamic portion. However, your lower abdominal muscles and your deep abdominal wall should be working into static motion to provide pressure against the lumbar. So even though the lumbar is in extension, you have the transverse abdominis and the rectus abdominis statically flexed like an isometric, kind of like you're doing a plank, in a position to where the lower back is not going too far into extension or compensating for the hips. When the core is fighting up against the lumbar and the lumbar is in a neutral position as your hips are moving during the hike, that is what's going to keep you from getting fatigued, sore, injured, anything like that.
And a lot of times when doing hikes or things that involve long periods of endurance, whether again it's a 2,000 footer, an 8,000 footer, whatever the case may be, endurance is going to mean having to hold certain positions for an extended period of time. A lot of times during those time frames, however long the hike may be, compensations are going to start to happen when fatigue is induced. So if your legs or your hips are starting to get tired, you might start to arch at the lower back. You may start to compensate through the shoulders to make sure you can hold that backpack in place. There's a lot of things that your body will do to try to get comfortable, but even though it's in a comfortable state, it doesn't necessarily mean that that position that you're in is the right position for your body.
Comfort can compromise.
It does. So the biggest thing to focus on, which is Connor's niche, is posture. We definitely focus a lot on making sure that you're standing upright and your posture is aligned. In regards for how to do that, we both take different approaches. A lot of times, my clients don't necessarily have the strength in order to hold themselves in those specific postures, whereas with Connor's clients, sometimes they may not have the mobility to actually get themselves into those positions, whether it be to keep your shoulders down and back and keep your hips forward, whatever the case may be. So there are a lot of different approaches and attacks that you can take to hitting posture, and then making sure when you're hiking, just remember like what your neutral posture is supposed to be like: big chest, shoulders back, hips forward, whatever the case may be, and give yourself those little tips to remind yourself during the hike to make sure, again, that the comfortability is not going to be compromising.
So if you're listening to this podcast right now, we're telling you to work on your posture and endurance. Okay, so if you're an outdoorsy person, you're looking to get some hiking in, get some biking, walking, focus on letting your body stay stable, strong, and straight. Now, let's move into some things you can do. So we kind of covered the big one, which is hiking. You know, New Hampshire has some really beautiful mountains, as well as Vermont and Maine, even Western Mass, so it's all around us. And hiking is one of the best things you can do for outdoor fitness. You're going to burn a lot of calories, you're going to strengthen your legs, you're going to get some cardio in.
I will, so not to go super off topic, but it's funny because so I'm originally from Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, a lot of the outdoor activities that we had didn't entail hiking and being outside. You could either go to a gym, you could go to a park, you could go walking. The options were very limited based upon where you lived in the city. So when I relocated to New Hampshire, I had a tremendous amount of clients come and approach me. Oh, I love to hike. And my first thought was, oh, well, I train athletes, like I train sports. Hiking's not necessarily a sport, but it is a variation of physical activity that people do train for, whether it's to climb Mount Washington or Mount Everest, depending on the size of the mountain. Regardless, it's something that you can train for. So even though there may not be the correlation of it being like a sport, it is something that people train for. So when I first moved here, it was kind of like a shell shock, like oh crap, like I don't know what to do because I've never had to train someone for hiking. So by kind of taking the principles of hiking and just kind of like what we've talked about so far, your posture, the primary muscles involved, what it entails, whether it be strength, endurance, or a combination of both. I had to almost teach myself in a sense, okay, how can I take what I use for my athletes and apply them to people that like to hike? Because again, being in the city, you don't get that a lot. So it's definitely a humbling challenge for sure, but I can totally see the appeal as to why people, especially in New Hampshire, where they have the opportunity to go an hour up into the White Mountains, why people would like to use that as an opportunity to expend upon their outdoor fitness.
And there's a lot of ways to use the outdoor fitness, even in an urban setting, where you might have some rail trails near your neighborhood where you can walk, run, bike on those. There's rec leagues available, whether it's tennis, football, rugby, soccer, whatever. Now, something a little bit more niche, there are outdoor gyms in New England. There's probably three, but from my experience, where I was a calisthenic athlete for a while, I really sought out outdoor gyms. And an outdoor gym generally consists of open-ended pull-up bars, meaning they're not mounted to a wall, they're mounted to the ground. And things where you can kind of throw your body weight around and just have a nice workout outside with some built-in equipment. I'll tell you that if you do live in New England, the Massachusetts town of Billerica has a outdoor trail where it's a walk and runnable trail that has workout stations built in. So they'll have like kind of sit-up benches, some balance beams, areas for pull-ups and various things like that. That kind of, and some of them are really creative and strange actually. So it's worth checking out. Then you have Salem, New Hampshire, which has a small outdoor park located at the Field of Dreams behind the high school. That also has a playground that you can let your kids run around in. It has some trails that you can explore with a ropes course that's been built in actually. But the outdoor gym there, I used to use quite a bit. And so it's built nicely. They actually have some mechanical crunch and press machines that are kind of fun. But they do have open-ended pull-up bars, dip bars, things like that. So if you're looking to get into calisthenics, that's a really good place to go. And then finally, there's also Magazine Beach in Boston. And that does have an outdoor park as well with some pull-up bars. You're going to find a lot more of these things out west and down south where the seasons are much more consistent and warm. Unfortunately, they don't exist in New Hampshire or Mass as much, or in New England states in general. I would like to actually push and try and get more of them developed because I think during the warm seasons, they can be really beneficial and fun to use. But beyond that, if you're looking at rec leagues, simple running around the neighborhood, things like that, there's also beach. We do have beaches in New England. And working out in the sand is quite a challenge that Dom can tell you about.
Yeah, no, it's a whole other dynamic. So when I used to train for rugby, when I was back in college, one of the things that I would always do is go to a local beach, and I more so run in the softer sand just because it's going to give you a little bit more resistance. So the biggest thing with running on uneven terrain or having resistance is going to be the power that your core and your hips have to extend, not just to fight the resistance of your own body to propel you forward, but also the resistance of the sand trying to slow you down. Every step that you take, your ankles may want to kind of slightly shift, which again is just going to create for great ankle stability. In the sense as to how that can translate into rugby, when you're running, it's almost like if you have a weighted vest and you add, like, let's say maybe 50 pounds to your overall body weight, and let's say you weigh about 150 pounds. So your total weight plus the vest is going to be 200 pounds. If you run, let's say a mile with 200 pounds in total, your body is going to have to work to be able to propel that 200 pounds. So now, let's say you do your mile with the vest on, and now you take the vest off. Your body's not going to be able to tell right off the bat that you just lost 50 pounds in the blink of an eye by taking off the vest. What your body's going to then do is probably work to the same capacity as to what it was like pushing that 200-pound person, but now you only weigh 150 pounds.
It's going to compensate upwards.
Exactly. So that's a very fancy way of saying something called accommodating resistance, which is basically adding external resistance to whether it be an exercise, your own body weight, to slightly alter it and make it more challenging. But then when you lose that resistance, it's going to make it much easier because you're putting in the same amount of force and power being applied with a heavier weight, but now it's with your own body weight. So again, your body is in a sense overreaching to make sure that it can meet up with demands as to what you're putting upon it. So by running in sand, even on an uneven terrain, whether it be rocks, dirt, whatever the case may be, uneven surfaces are always going to create better lower body strength. It's also going to help with shock absorption through the joints as well. So for impact is also a great opportunity to kind of help those joints. So there's a lot of benefits that can come with doing some variation of outdoor training.
And as a former calisthenic and current OCR athlete, weight vests are something I use very regularly in my training. There's a kind of within the calisthenic community, you'll get some pushback on traditional bodybuilders maybe saying, oh, you can't build muscle with body weight, and they're so wrong. Weight vests really come in handy with that. The idea is, in calisthenic, the rule is, it's body weight in bands. Some free weight, mostly for legs. But other than that, it's about creativity, leverage, and gravity. But I'd say the weight vests are great for building muscle, stability in the joints, and you're going to burn a lot more calories when you add that resistance. But so if we kind of total up the things to do, we have hiking, biking, running, beach workouts, rec leagues, outdoor gyms, and obstacle course racing. Now, if we kind of get into like the specifics of a few of those that you might not have tried yet, biking, there's rail trail biking, there's road biking, and there's mountain biking. I personally am a mountain biker. I absolutely love it. I've been doing it since I was a kid. And I've always kind of found comfort in the woods. And when I'm able to speed through the woods at like 10 miles an hour going down trail, it might not sound like a lot, but it's a pretty good speed when you're on a level. And there's a lot of different ways to mountain bike. It's definitely a little bit more of a commitment of a hobby. But if you've never tried riding through the woods and you do know how to ride a bike, I would definitely suggest giving it a shot on some local trails just to try something different. OCR is another thing where that's usually an outdoor sport. They do have stadium competitions occasionally, but primarily it is outdoors. And you're running up and down side of hills, mountains, carrying sandbags, climbing ropes, jumping over walls, getting muddy, and it's an absolute blast. We do run a team out of here, and if you're interested in anything like that, come talk to us. We'll help you out. But if you are looking to expand your field of fitness, try something new, and then really discover what your weak areas are, do one obstacle race and it'll have the answers for you.
Yeah, no. So I've only done one obstacle race in my time, and I do remember it really is a full body workout in the sense that you do really have to rely on just about everything to kind of push you through the obstacles, in addition to having your own weight underneath you. So like, for an example, someone like myself compared to someone like Connor, Connor doesn't have as much weight to have to carry as someone like me. So with Connor, he's going to be able to expel a lot more power more quickly, as opposed to someone like myself that has a little bit extra weight to me. I have to work a lot harder in order to get myself through obstacles, compared to someone like him that not only does he have the experience and the better body mechanics for it, he also just knows how to put his body into certain positions in order to help you conquer those obstacles. Whereas with myself, a lot of times when fatigue starts to get induced and I can't rely on strictly just endurance, I'll try to muscle things out, which is not necessarily the best way to conquer obstacles depending on the course that you're doing. But sometimes desperate calls call for desperate measures, and I was determined to finish.
I'll tell you this, if you're heavier and you're trying to do an obstacle course race, don't let that ever put you off to it, because there are people 3 times my size doing them, and it doesn't matter what your build is. What matters is your determination and your technique.
I was just about to say determination to get it done.
Yep, but technique is really important in obstacle racing, and there are ways to specifically train for it that we do here. There is a gym in Lawrence called Fitness Appeal that specializes in that as well. And the idea is, with every obstacle you challenge, there's a way to muscle it and there's a way to do it right. And when you do it right, you're conserving energy. So when you learn how to hop an 8-foot wall and use your feet, use your leverage, and use your body weight, you're gonna sling yourself right over that, whether you're 150 or 250. And so the hardest part beyond the technique of the obstacles is just the cardio. And in a lot of races, they're not going to force you to run. You're allowed to walk and stroll through it and just kind of take the obstacles as they come. But if you're a little bit more competitive and you want to push yourself, the run is always going to be there for you, which is why I think cardio is a good thing to keep up with as well.
A lot of times with the cardio piece as well, people think that it specifically just has to be running. It does not have to be that at all. You can do cardio in the sense of going out for a walk. You can go jogging. You can even do cardio with weights.
Yep.
There is
HIIT training.
Yeah, HIIT training. So there's multiple types and variations of cardio. A lot of people think that you have to be able to run. That's not always the case. You can get sometimes just as much work done doing a high intensity interval session as you would walking on a treadmill for 40 minutes, because it's about the rate that you're willing to push yourself. So if you're on a treadmill at a steady state pace for 40 minutes, that's great. Maybe you burn like 400 calories in 40 minutes. I'm just kind of throwing numbers out there. If you did a 20-minute high intensity interval workout, maybe that workout's only 20 minutes, but there's a good chance you could probably still burn that same amount of calories, if not more, because your heart is having to work harder to get you through that high intensity. So it really just comes down to, with cardio, endurance is definitely one piece, and then intensity, meaning duration or the style of which you're doing it, is also going to be the other piece. And trying to find that sweet spot, it's really just going to be a determination as to where your starting point is.
Throwing your body around different ways does burn calories. In cardio, running, let's take running as just an example, is a very plain movement. And you're going to burn calories, you're going to get your cardio in, but working various levels of intensity is going to influence that as well. But a simple HIIT training circuit, you could go everything from burpees to jump squats to over-unders to a plank.
You could do sprints, you could do kettlebell swings, you could do core.
You're getting that heart rate up and you're still burning those calories, but you're also building the strength and mobility to throw your body around different planes.
Exactly. So a lot of times with cardio, people they hear the word and it's very unmotivating rather to like actually commit yourself to doing the cardio piece. I definitely have some clients when I say I think that you should work on your cardio, I always get which I totally understand that. However, it's just going to make all of the other pieces that you're doing that much easier, whether it be training for strength, endurance, whatever the case is. Having a strong heart is going to just take you a long way.
Remember, the heart is a muscle too.
So the harder you train it, the stronger it will be and the more stuff that you'll be able to do.
Now let's take that and let's move into what to do on the days where you can't be outside, the rainy days. Now, if you're a person who loves to run in the rain, keep scrolling. So beyond that, the rest of us who are stuck in a gym on a rainy day, There are a lot of different things you can do. If we're going to look at just your traditional gym, you back in for a day, you have incline treadmill, weighted carries are two things that you can do to still work on your lower body and your cardiac endurance and kind of emulate your hikes if you're still kind of going into that. However, one thing you might want to do in the gym on your off days is upper body. Because even though there is upper body strength involved in outdoor activities, we have to think about the fact that by comparison to the lower body, it lacks. And even though, let's say you're carrying a backpack, you could call that upper body, but that's a very static movement. There's really no dynamic strength or mobility built into it. So take your day to work on your overhead movements, okay? Work on your upper body push-ups, your push, your pull, your twists, all that. And make sure that you give it the time to compensate for how strong your lower body is getting. Make sure your upper body catches up. But if you're doing endurance races like OCR and things like that, you're going to be working upper body along the way as well. But if you're just out there on a weekend trying to get a hike in, but it happens to be raining that time, but you still want to do something, take that time to come into the gym, warm up with some lower body to remind you that it's there, but put a little bit more attention to your upper body.
Definitely. So in regards for making sure that you are training your upper body, a lot of times, depending as to what your training schedule might be, as long as you're hitting your lower body and your upper body at least once a week for each, then you're probably on a really good start to a good program. So depending as to the type of activity that you're doing, how long it may be, is obviously going to vary the variables of your training, whether the style of the training, how long you have to train for an event. There's so many different factors that can influence the style of which you do train. So with your lower body, as it being the primary focus for these outdoor activities, just don't forget that all primaries are going to have to rely on some type of accessory muscle to help assist those primary functional movements. So it's great that you want to hammer away at your lower body, or you want to get the big biceps or whatever the case is for your upper body. That's all well and fine. But again, when you go back to the application piece of it, are your massive bis and tris going to help you be a more strong or a stronger hiker? Probably not. It's going to help you get a really good arm swing when you go to kind of help to propel yourself forward.
Yourself up the mountain.
But again, what's going to be the thing that's going to get you up the mountain? Is it going to be the strength of your arm swing, or is it going to be the quad that's going to be propelling you forward?
Train for your game.
Exactly. So there's a reason that people say don't skip leg day. That's a real saying for a multitude of reasons. One, you don't want to have chicken legs, and two, it's just going to help you be that much stronger. And also, too, as you start to age, most people always complain about back pain. So it's just probably one of the primary ways that you can reduce back pain without having to resort to either medication, cortisone injections, physical therapy. If you take care of it now and focus on all the things that we've talked about so far, the core, your core strength, posture, endurance, lower body dynamics, all of that will help to just, again, carry you that much further into your fitness journey, especially with the nicer weather coming up.
And let's say on that weekend where you want to go do a hike or something, but again, it's raining and this time you don't really feel like going to the gym. There are a couple things you can do that can spice up that weekend for you and still give you a good workout and a little bit more fun along the way. And a big one that I actually like to do a lot is rock climbing. So there's plenty of rock climbing gyms around. It's become a growing fad, and grip strength, core strength, and mobility are what form the pyramid for rock climbing. And it takes a lot of practice if you've never done it before. Even if you're a professional at it, you're still going to be practicing because it is a skill, it is a sport. And it's something that's just a little different. There's always a wall out there for everyone. If you're afraid of heights, they have bouldering. And you don't have to go all the way up the wall either.
I am one of those people that are afraid of heights.
That's totally okay. Even when I'm getting up, like I know there's a climbing gym in Manchester, New Hampshire called Vertical Dreams. There's 2 locations. There's another in Nashua. I really like the one in Manchester because their bouldering is very creative, and they have a few top rope areas up top. But what's interesting about that location is it's in an old mill building, as is most of Manchester, but they have a 3-level elevator shaft where you're actually climbing up routes that are 50 to 70 feet tall, and it's so scary, but it's a lot of fun.
No
It's
offense, but screw that, man.
but you work your way up. You slowly get a little more comfortable, and you breathe, you control your anxiety. But again, it's not for everyone.
I get anxiety being 5 feet off the ground.
That's fair. But at the same time, if you're not really into that, you can try a lot of places that have been popping up lately that do indoor golf. Even if you're not a golfer, get in there, swing your body around, have a little fun. You're not going to be throwing yourself into a 200 heart rate zone, hopefully, but you're still going to be moving. You're going to be having fun. Sometimes those places do axe throwing too, and it's at least an opportunity or an activity that you can do to keep your body moving on a rainy day.
And it does also help that when you're in that type of setting, in that indoor setting, it's a little bit more leisureful, it's a little bit more laid back, so you're really able to focus on those specific mechanics as to whether it be your golf swing, making sure that you're swinging with your hips and not just trying to crank the ball out with your shoulders. So by practicing and taking the time, it's almost like being an athlete. Like when you're kind of stuck on the inside or indoors, it's almost like your preseason or like your off season, in the sense that you're preparing for what's yet to come. Your in season is going to be those summer and spring months that you're able to actually apply the indoor golf training or your rock climbing or whatever it may be. You can take that work that you've been doing indoors and apply it to outside. Once you go outside and you start getting into your sport, it's going to obviously take a little bit to kind of get back into the rhythm of things, because again, even if you do something as small as rock climbing or indoor golf, not every wall is going to be the same, not every golf course is going to be the same, and not every golf swing is going to be the same. So with rock climbing specifically, it's a great way to get those fundamentals as to where to be placing your body in order for the most strength and stability. So when you go outside, it's going to be a lot easier, whether you're climbing like Mount Monadnock or Washington or whatever mountain of New Hampshire or wherever you may be. It's just taking those mechanics and being able to apply them to what you need it to. Same thing with like running on a beach. I used to take the mechanics of my sprinting and the power drive that I used to get through my hips and apply that to rugby. If I can run on a grass field like I'm running in sand, I'm going to have that much more powerful of a stride, just because I'm going to be pushing off the ground as if I'm pushing against the resistance of stand, even though there's nothing there. So it's just going to help you expel yourself to be that much better of not just even an athlete for those that you don't consider yourself athletes, but it's just going to help you be a stronger, more healthy individual.
And so one last thing that you could also consider doing, if you don't already use this tool, is personal training. So you have a rainy day, you come in, you see your trainer, and they kick your butt. At least you know that you came in and you worked with someone who geared that workout towards what you're trying to work on through your season. Maybe we emulated some stuff for hiking. Maybe we focused on the upper body to get the lower body a break.
A lot of times people refer to activities that are like the main activity that you're trying to do. A lot of people say that that's a category, as we know, as functional fitness. The reason that we try to prevent saying that is because functional fitness is something that can basically help you, whether it's in your sport or just leisure day-to-day activities. Most people literally will joke and say that bicep curls are one of the most functional movements because it's allowing you to take a cup, to curl it to your mouth. As comical as that may be, again, are those big biceps really going to help you climb that mountain, climb that rock wall, get a bigger golf swing? No. So it's a matter of where in the functional part are you doing something that's going to resemble what you're doing outside the most similar. So that way, when you do go outside, that transition is just going to be a lot lighter on your body.
Even at the same time, one way I like to look at it is not even focusing on the movements and the things that you do for your sport or your activity, but any movement the body can do, it should do. So you can spend your time in the gym doing all the opposite motions that you're used to doing, and then getting those muscles some attention as well. Because odds are, when you create a dominant chain in your body, from which you inevitably will whenever you're doing a consistent activity or sport, it's very important to take days and do everything opposite of what you're usually putting yourself through, and that's how you're going to gain balance. And that can fall under corrective exercise, that can fall under a regular workout, just focusing on your weaker areas.
A lot of times for the workout world, people refer to it as like a push day or a pull day because you're working those two opposite motions of what your muscles can do. So when you're pushing, it's going to be a lot more chest, shoulders, and tricep work when you're pushing things away from you. When you're taking something and pulling it towards you, it's going to be a lot more in the back and the biceps. So again, to work both of those contradicting motions, it's just going to create total body balance.
And remember, like if you're sitting at a desk most of the time, your arms are never above your head, so do some overhead exercises. The idea is it doesn't matter what muscle group as much as it matters movement. We want to be focusing on in functional fitness, which again has kind of become a buzzword, but the idea is you're not training muscle, you're training movement. Okay? Now, just to kind of top things off, we'll give you an idea for what we like to do in the sunny weather to come. I am still getting prepared for the Spartan races I like to do, the obstacle course racing stuff. Like I said, we do have a team here. I've been competing in those for a few years now. They're a lot of fun. They hit from every direction. I've got my first trifecta last year, which was consecutively the 5K race, 10K, and a 22. And so you're kind of finishing up with a little over a marathon in total. You're not doing all three at once, though you can if you're ready for that. I like to do the first two back to back, and then I take the third one, the longest one, and do that on its own. And so that's been a lot of fun. It gives me something to work towards, and it helps my body move in a lot of different ways. And it keeps me from getting into like that static weightlifting routine. Beyond that, hiking is big for me. This year, I'm going to try and conquer as many of the 4,000 footers as I can. I would have loved to do that for a long time now, but at the end of the day, the biggest issue I run into is time. With that said, if I don't have the time to drive 2.5 hours north to do a 6-hour hike to drive 2.5 hours back, I'll pull out my mountain bike and I'll go do some trails that might only be 45 minutes away. And then I can do 10 miles in like an hour and a half and then come back and I've still got a killer workout in. I've seen some nature. I had some fun. Hopefully I didn't get hurt. And, between OCR, hiking, and biking, those are the three things that I live for and I train for. I try to balance them out and make sure I don't have too much going at once. Hiking is more of my leisure. Mountain biking is more of my competitive, and OCR is kind of more something I like to do socially. But between the three, it definitely keeps me busy, and in the off season, there's still plenty to work on.
So things that I would say that I like to do being outdoors when given the opportunity. So rail trail biking is definitely something that I've become really fond of up here. We have a beautiful rail trail that starts all the way down in Salem, I believe, and extends all the way up to, I believe, Lebanon, New Hampshire, which is a pretty good distance. I want to say that the total distance on the trail is like a little over 100 miles. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out New Hampshire, so I could be totally off, so don't take my word on that. Regardless, it's a great trail for either walking, biking, running. Just a really great opportunity for you to get outside, take your dog out, whatever the case may be, and just be able to go see some nature.
I thought about rollerblading some trails.
Rollerblade. So people like to rollerblade too, so that's definitely a great option. So the rail trail, again, it's a great tool to have. I used to live in Massachusetts, and there used to be an Arlington bike path, and that was a place that I used to hang out at a lot. So there wasn't necessarily a lot of walking and running per se, definitely a lot more bikes, but it was a nice, safe area to be able to go out and take your bike for that long distance bike ride, however long you decide you want it to be. You could always get off. There's always stops along the way. So again, just a great opportunity to kind of follow up with some of the other things that I like to do outside. Walking scenic routes is definitely something that I really enjoy, just because in combination with the walk, it's almost like a sense of meditation, so peacefulness and mindfulness. So a lot of times when I decide to go on my walks, I like to be near areas of water, whether it's a lake, a pond, ocean, beach, whatever the case is. It's just something about it brings a relaxing sensation, which is something that I have a very hard time trying to do, is going from like a state of on the go all the time, 24/7, to trying to bring it down a couple of notches to just be present in the moment and being able to stay relaxed. So I would say that walking scenic routes is definitely one, and the last one is basketball. So I'm not anything great at basketball, but it's always been one of those activities that I can remember from the time of growing up being a kid. I would go out and I would shoot a ball for like maybe 6 to 8 hours a day. It was just something that, again, you can kind of just focus on being in the present, being in the now. You could focus on your shot. You could focus on driving. You could focus on a bunch of different things when it comes to basketball. You don't have to be an NBA All-Star or that great of a basketball player to just enjoy going out to shoot a ball around. And not to mention, too, all these activities that we talked about, these are all things that you can even do with your friends, family members, or whatever. And that's just going to even help to getting outside, make it that much more appealing, because you don't have to necessarily do things by yourself. A lot of times when we're not in the gym, Connor and I will usually try to link up maybe like once or twice a month, just to be able to go outside and do something, whether it's we go for a walk, we go grab coffee and go do something, whatever the case is. It's allowing to be present in the moment and enjoy the time that we get to spend outdoors, because let's face it, spring and summer in New England, it's not very consistent. It's not like California or Florida where it's beautiful all year round. So being able to
take what you can get.
yeah, exactly. You got to be able to capitalize, get that vitamin D. A lot of times people get deprived on that during the winter seasons because we spend most of the time inside. So there's a lot of benefits that just come from being outside and taking in that fresh air, as opposed to the air of the four walls that may be your house. So
we got another benefit for you. So one thing that we offer here at Shoe Dominance is our adventure training program, and it is a blast. We've been doing it since we opened, and if you're not familiar with it, essentially the idea is we have different tiers, where tier 1 might be walking some local trails, just getting you familiar with what you might not have explored. So myself, I, being a very outdoorsy person, whether it's usually rain or shine, if I have an open day, I'm out doing something, I'm finding a new trail. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the trails, both well-known and hidden throughout Mass and New Hampshire. And so if you're local to this area, come into the gym and we'll kind of help you find some of those areas. We'll work them with you. Tier 2, we might be working a little bit more towards further north, further south, further west, doing some more challenging hikes, getting a little bit more elevation, maybe 2,000 feet. And then we do have the third tier where we're going to go take on some 4,000 footers and then maybe set a date to take on Washington this year. The adventure training, the idea behind it is when you're hiking, kind of like what we discussed throughout this podcast, is there are ways to do it right. And so there are muscles that we want to focus on. There are positions, there's adaptability through the terrain. If you're not a super experienced hiker, but you want to try and get out more and you want to make sure you do it safely and you don't get lost, we're a resource that we're going to make sure we're well versed with the trail before we take you anywhere. You're up to the game, and we're going to make sure we do it safely, we take the right pace, and no one gets hurt or lost. And so not only do we do hiking, but we'll also go do some group runs. If you have a bike, we'll go out biking. The idea is adventure doesn't have to be something super far away and extravagant. Adventure can be going 3 miles down the street to a new trail that you discovered and just seeing things, smelling, hearing, getting your senses stimulated in a way that you haven't seen before.
taking in your surroundings.
Taking in your surroundings. So an adventure is small or big, and we want to help the community see what else is there and kind of branch outside what they might have done before and do it in a way that feels safe and controlled.
And to be able to do that with people of, again, similar goals, just to improve their overall health, whether it be build muscle, lose weight, gain weight, whatever the case is, by allowing people to meet each other on these hikes and get a sense of camaraderie that we're all in this together trying to work towards that healthier lifestyle. It's a really great opportunity to, again, go out and see some really cool places that you may have never knew existed, or just be able to meet some of the same people that have really common goals. You'll never really know as to who you're gonna meet on these trails. We had one guest come on, and he was actually a big influencer in developing Star Wars. So again, you kind of never really know as to what you're gonna get on these trails. We had other people from like that have been able to travel overseas. We've had other people that have done other outdoor experiences that neither Connor or I have had the opportunity to do, like Zion Hill. So you again, it's awesome to be able to focus on those main goals of health, of the healthier lifestyle. It's even more fun to do it with a group of people, and the best way to do it is when it is warm outside. You can actually go out and enjoy yourself, not have to worry about getting lost or having it rain on you or your GPS dying in the middle of the woods. So it's nice to not have to worry about these factors.
We do as well do the winter program or the adventure program through the winter as well for those who are a little bit braver. But you know, when you're out in the woods, especially, we're kind of catering towards a population who might not do this as much or be out there as often. So I am an Eagle Scout, and I've spent like majority of my childhood growing up outside. And so when we take you out on these hikes, we know where we're going. We're going to make sure that you feel safe and that you have a good time. So go ahead, you can check out the details on our website and find some of the posts online. If you have any questions, if you're interested in trying it this year and going on a hike or a bike ride or anything like that and just kind of hanging out, meeting some new people and having fun in the sun, go ahead and give us a message, and we'll help you get signed up.
If you also have any ideas as to places that you would like to go on the adventure hikes, or it doesn't necessarily even have to be a hike. If you know of any outdoor type of activity, whether it be an outdoor gym, a scenic route, whatever the case may be, let us know. Again, we're always trying to find different things around the area. So we're only two guys. We can't cover all of southern New Hampshire by ourselves. So
we'll try.
We're trying. But again, if we have feedback on places that you guys enjoy, whether it be like you went to this place one time, you thought it had like a really cool waterfall, a really cool view, let us know. And we can definitely try to incorporate that into some of the things that we're doing. Because again, as much as it is about the program and things like that and wanting to have fun, it's more meant to have you guys enjoy the scenes and the areas that we're taking you to. So thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for being fellow listeners, and stay tuned as Connor and Dom continue to talk about more stuff in future podcasts.
Thank you.